All right, y'all, so it's time for another Q&A. Had a lot of questions come in, so what I'm gonna do is take the top 3 and get those questions answered. Coming up. First question I got today is from Dallas Skipper. Shout out to Dallas Skipper for asking this question. He says, when the $100 earnest money deposit is due at the end of inspection period, who do I give the $100 to? Directly to the seller or the attorney handling the title work and closing? Great question, Dallas. First and foremost, I want to encourage everybody to continue asking your questions because I can continue to create more content for you and also get your questions answered on videos just like this one. Rapid fire Q&As. To answer your question, Dallas, in its simplest form, what you want to do is you want to provide the earnest money deposit to either the attorney or the title company closing the deal when you are wholesaling the property, okay? Just to keep it really simple, you never want to give any money to the seller. If you do, you will never see that money again, all right? So when I'm purchasing houses or I'm wholesaling houses, I'm never providing the seller with a dime out of my pocket. I will provide a small earnest money deposit to either the attorney closing the deal or the title company, depending on which state I'm in. Here in North Carolina, we use attorneys. When I lived in Pennsylvania, we used title companies. So it just depends. When I'm selling the property, I want the earnest money deposit to come to me, if that makes sense. So if I'm asking for, let's say, $1,000 down, I want that money to come to me. Now, most real estate investors, if you're wholesaling the house, they're gonna be more comfortable providing the closing attorney or the title company with the earnest money deposit. But usually, I like to collect those checks. At the end of the day, always try to go through the title company or the attorney handling the process. I'm not sure who this question came from, but I thought it was a really good question. It says, how soon after the assignment contract is signed do you request an earnest money deposit? In order to answer that question, I want you to keep in mind, you don't have a valid contract or a valid assignment of contract until you have an earnest money deposit put down on the property or on the contract. You need that earnest money deposit immediately. If you go a certain amount of time without the earnest money deposit, there's no deal. I usually give my buyers 24 to 48 hours to put down an earnest money deposit with the title company or the closing attorney handling the deal, or give the money to me. And at the end of the day, once they give me the money, then the contract is valid. Without the earnest money deposit, you don't technically have a valid contract. So I hope that answers your question. All right, so the next question came from Ayoba Alori. And he says, how do you structure a deal if the seller needs some cash at closing? In this case, he was talking about the subject to explanation video that I had. He actually asked this question on that video. I'll link it up at the top so you can actually see it. Basically, when it comes to that type of deal, it really all depends on a lot of different factors. You know, if you have a seller that needs some cash at closing, that's gonna if you have a seller that needs some capital at the closing, that's gonna depend on a lot of different circumstances. You had another part to your question. You're trying to buy a property. The seller is willing to sell for $450,000. He has a mortgage of $150,000 and needs $300,000 in 2 months. You also said you wanted to know if it would be possible to do a subject to on this, rehab and refinance and cash out after 2 months to pay the seller off. That's, first of all, if you gotta do refinance and you gotta do rehab and all that, you're gonna need far more than 2 months. It's gonna take 2 months just to rehab the house. All right, so that's a whole nother story for another day. You said, do you know if there's any limitations on how soon you can do a refinance? You said the property is worth $550,000 fixed up, ARV, after repaired value, and you appreciate the advice. So honestly, looking at this question and looking at these numbers that you presented, I think this is a wholesale deal for you. So you said the property is worth $550,000. The seller wants $300,000. That leaves you $250,000 in equity. Again, I don't know how much work the property needs, but I believe if you talk the seller down to about $275, $280, you could probably resell this property at 70 cents on the dollar for about $330 to $350 and make a nice wholesale profit on this deal. You don't have to go through the subject to strategy in order to get this done. This is more of a quick cash assignment deal for you, especially when you told me in this comment on YouTube that you don't have any money, you don't have a lot of time. There's a lot of factors playing against you right now. So what I recommend you do is talk to the seller, see if you can get the property for about $275,000, $280,000. That'll leave you with a nice spread of $550. You know, the difference between $275 or $280 and $550, and then try to resell the contract on the property for about $325,000 to $330,000. If you pick it up for $275, you sell it for $325,000. That's a $50,000 assignment fee for you. The seller's happy, you're happy, and the buyer gets a good property. So I hope that answers your question. So this question came from Michael Davis. He basically said, could I possibly do a video on the type of paperwork that's needed to do these types of deals? So if we're talking about wholesaling, there's really only two things that you need to focus on: a purchase and sale agreement and an assignment of contract. That's it. And I have videos up on YouTube where I provide the contracts for you for free, both videos, to purchase and to assign the contract, and I explain all the details in the contract. I'll link both of those up at the top. But at the end of the day, you only need two contracts in order to wholesale real estate. There's no excuses anymore. I've provided so much information on YouTube that you can literally go from where you are right now to where you want to go in this business. At the end of the day, it's all about taking action. If you guys have more questions, continue to send them over to me. I want to continue answering your questions, making sure we go into more detail. If you need more detail on the questions that was just answered, let me know. I'll go into more detail. But I think I've gone into enough detail to be able to help you, each of you who ask these questions, to get your deals done. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment. Let me know what questions you have. I'll be happy to get your questions answered for you. Talk to you later.